Hello.
Hi. Right. Here we are. Stress month. I am chatting with Tanya Stricek. Tanya, do you want to just tell us a little bit about what you do and then we'll talk stress?
Sure. I'm a dental hygienist turned nutritionist who became passionate about mindful eating and health and a way to blend all the things we hear about health and create. First of all, I created my own wisdom so I could make my own health path. And that's what I do for women now. Pull all the things in and help them create their own little toolkit using mindful eating and not calorie counting.
Excellent. Right. Stress. I mean, it's this time of year when there's a lot of stress anyway.
Yes. And I was thinking about this exact thing, how we recorded a stress one before in December. And I almost think it amplifies who we are as women when it comes to the holiday season. So if you are an overdoer, then you're going to take on more. If you're an overthinker, you're going to worry about more. That's been a lot of the themes of some of my clients this month too, especially when it comes to eating. They're overeating, they're over worrying. And we forget too that stress is a response to so many things. So when we try and say, I'm stressed and I need to manage my stress, we have to really think about what it is we're managing. Is it boundaries? Is it thoughts about certain people, thoughts about yourself?
Now, I just thought of something as you were saying that. We're both in the Northern Hemisphere. I wonder if, yes, it's the holiday season and there's all that extra stuff going on, but I wonder if because we've got shorter days, it feels like there's more time to ruminate. I wonder whether it's as stressful for people in the Southern Hemisphere, even though, in Australia, they're still celebrating Christmas at this time of year. But I wonder if I'm off on a tangent, sorry.
No, I don't think it's a tangent. I think it's a very appropriate thing to think about because when we have shorter days, and it's cloudy out here. It's been cloudy for days. We have had rain for days. When we have shorter days, we have less access to sunlight. And when we are missing that natural light, even though it's diffused through clouds, it's still natural light, but it's filtered through a window, right? What we do is change the way our brain chemistry is. And so this can bring in that seasonal affective disorder, those lower feelings, changes in your neurotransmitters, even serotonin, vitamin D. All of these things contribute to emotional changes too. And I think it's very pertinent. Not that I want to go off on a tangent, but I was also thinking about how many ladies in the hub will talk about their bloating and their gas, and probiotics aren't just the answer. There's a whole gut brain connection. There's a whole relationship here. And part of that relationship can start with the shorter days, with the lack of sunlight, etc.
With stress. I mean, stress has a huge impact on our digestive system, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. I mean, and I think people will also not recognize that they're stressed, but yes, stress will shut down your digestion. When you think of where digestion starts, and as a hygienist, I always thought, well, it starts in the mouth because the spit flows and you're going to chew. No, it starts up here in something called the hypothalamus. There's a couple of compartments to the hypothalamus. That's your operating system. It's kind of like your little Mac keyboard brain. And that just has to balance everything in the body. So it starts to take in information. And if you are stressed, it's doing the fight or flight thing. There's a bear. There's my cell phone. I've got an interview with Emily. I can't think. I'm stressed. We don't need to digest. We need to survive. So we're not really worried about eating. And that has a compound effect by letting your food sit in your gut, putrefy, and all the bacteria overgrows. And you can have those symptoms that these ladies talk about.
Yeah. This is the thing. I mean, this is why stress is one of the topics. I mean, we could have stress as the monthly topic every month, frankly, because it just has such a huge impact. And I'm pretty certain I've voiced this thought before, but I'm pretty certain that our generation is the generation who've been brought up to think we can have it all. We can have kids. We can have the job. We can be all things to all people. We have more inherent stress going on than previous generations, I think. And currently we're living in a pandemic.
Absolutely. I think we downplay a lot of the pandemic situation and the underlying, when you think about it, it's a collective underlying energy of stress throughout the world. How can that not affect us, right? So when women are worried about their 10 pounds gained through their pandemic lockdown, I mean, I get it, but there's a deeper issue here. And what you said too about us having more stress, I agree. Women have a lot of roles to play. And I shouldn't just say women because it can extend to men too. But there's a lot of global expectations of women too. And we accept it. We take on more. We say yes. We still act without boundaries at times when it comes to family. I'm guilty of it. You know, family, job, etc. for whatever reasons you're programmed to do so. So it's a lot on our shoulders.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, I know from personal experience that when you are really stressed, because you've got all those big things going on, you can't see the wood for the trees. Actually, when you've got the really big stressful stuff going on, sometimes you do just have to, you know, grin and bear it and know that it will pass. But it's all those little bits that happen all the time. It's the remembering what things you need to put on the shopping list. It's the, you know, putting gas in the car. It's all those little things. They're not stressful in their own right, each on top of each other. If they're making you late for things, or if they're adding extra sort of burdens onto the day, suddenly it becomes, and your body still responds as though you're, you know, in a fight or flight situation.
Yes. And I like that you brought that up because a lot of us can get down on ourselves, again, myself included, by forgetting things and brain fog. And we put it down to perimenopause. Same with menopause symptoms. They could actually be or perimenopause symptoms. They can be exacerbated by stress. But we can say, oh, you know, I have peri-brain. But take a look, like what's happening in your life. Because when the stress response goes, there is a connection between that hypothalamus and then our pituitary gland and then our adrenals. It's called the HPA axis. This is your stress response. And you can require more vitamins at this time. You can require more rest, but we also have everything on overdrive. Your immune system is on overdrive. Your mind is probably racing. And so your brain isn't really thinking, it's again in survival mode. It's not thinking about what you need to get at the grocery store.
No.
No.
And when you're aware of that, you can spot yourself, can't you? You can. I had a day the other morning, just everything was going wrong. It was just one of those days, and I was late. And I hate being late. That's one of those things that gives me a little peak of stress when it happens. And I was just running around like a headless chicken, and kept going out to the car, in the car, going, shit, I've forgotten such and such. Back in the house, back to the car. I made myself so much later because I was stressed. I couldn't just do the basic thing of running through the mental to-do list of what I needed to put in the car. It just exacerbates itself then, doesn't it? I mean, I watched myself and sort of took humour from it because I was aware of what was going on. But when we're not, that then just builds and builds. And that's when we suddenly explode at somebody because they drive too slowly or whatever, you know.
Yes, yes. I actually use the term like this just iced my cake because sometimes those things build up and then somebody driving too slow is the last thing and you feel like rage or you cry or you lose it, right? And yes, having changes in your hormones certainly doesn't help your mood. Again, the gut does support hormones, but it really is, it's such a multi-layered topic. And what you said too about stress can actually feed into, and I know we're going to talk about this later, but it will feed into the way you are automatically going through your habits too. So.
Absolutely. And it impacts on, it's terrifying how it impacts on everything.
Yes. And then, you know, there's the words of stress management or chill out. So what do you do, right? What can you do if you can't go to a yoga class, if you can't chill your mind down for meditation? I'm a very type A personality. So when meditation and mindfulness was introduced to me, I was pretty much like, who the hell has time for that? Like,
What?
you know, to just sit. Hello, who's going to clean the kitchen, right? Who's going to make dinner? Right? But I utilized breathing. I learned that breathing helps the brain calm down. And when I was in my busy clinical practice and I would be behind in clients and I had to move to the next one because I would be thinking about the next one, but I still had the one in the chair. Like, how is that serving people? But I would use breathing, just even 1 minute of that deep breath to give yourself a pause and tell your nervous system and body, you know, we're safe, we're going to be okay. And you're oxygenating yourself, you're giving yourself a bit of a clear head, you're helping your digestion, you're even moving lymph flow with breathing.
And it's funny, isn't it? It is literally what it all comes down to. Because I know you've seen, I've been doing this stress management advent calendar kind of onto the Hub Plus,
Yes,
and
which is great.
On Instagram and stuff. And actually, when you look at all of the things, they all actually boil down to breathing.
Yes.
You know, whether it's stretching, whether it's listening to music, whether it's getting outdoors, whether it's moving, all of those things, you focus more on your breathing. You know, listening to music and singing along, you're having to focus on your breathing. Going for a brisk walk, you're having to deal with your breathing, so on and so forth. And actually, I couldn't really do an advent calendar that just day 1, breathe. Day 2, breathe. Day 24, happy Christmas Eve, breathe.
Breathe 24 times.
Yeah.
But you're right, though, it's fundamental to life. So it would make sense that it does something for the body. And there's many types of breathing exercises. There's the box breathing where you breathe in, breathe out. There's 4-7-8 breathing, or there really is just getting a keyword like pause. Take a breath, because this is where the juice is. You can become aware of what really is stressing you if you're brave enough to ask, because we think it's your partner stressing you and we want to place that blame on something else. However, something your partner is doing is triggering a thought, a feeling, an emotion, a past story, and you are reacting. And so how do we interrupt that reaction?
Absolutely. And all the more so as we come up to the holiday period. You know, a lot of people have this idea of how Christmas should be perfect, whatever that may mean. And how do you know that in itself is giving an extra level of stress, which you may end up taking out on other people because they're not doing things perfectly, but they might not know what you're wanting anyway. Because if I don't think I'm alone in this, when I'm stressed, my communication skills disappear.
Sure.
I expect everyone around me to be psychic, and frankly, it drives me crazy when they're not. You know,
yes.
Add in all stuff, all the pressures around, you know, holiday season and needing to be here, there, and everywhere, and trying to build things to all people, and then trying to make everything perfect. And funnily enough, the people around you don't know what that perfect's meant to look like, because chances are you don't really.
Absolutely. And maybe you also don't know why you need it to be perfect to begin with. I had a very interesting conversation this week with a client who was stressing about the perfection of Christmas. And she tended to bury her other anxieties in perfectionism. And when we think about how this plays out with food and eating, right? Perfectionism is huge in there. So what does this give you when your holiday season is coming off perfect? And has it ever come off perfect in your mind, or does it fall short every year? So if it falls short every year in your mind, maybe it's time to relook at your expectations that you're placing on yourself and other people. And what does perfectionism really mean? What are you trying to achieve with that perfectionism? Is it meaning that you're saying something about yourself to the world? Because half the time the world, which is usually at the holiday season, our friends and family, they're sitting there thinking, this is just pretty fine. Thank you very much. We're all having a good time.
And that's the thing. If you take away that horrible internal voice that, you know, leads you to perfectionism and everything, and you think, well, actually, what would I really like out of the holiday season? I'm going to suggest, you know, some people will disagree here, but the majority of people, the things they want: to see friends and family, to laugh, to enjoy themselves. Now, on that list, there isn't anything about the food being served at exactly the right time, the dress fitting perfectly, any of those, one hair being out of place, you know, all of the perfectionist things. Because actually, for most of us, when we're catching up with friends and family, it's about the feeling, isn't it? It's about feeling like we belong, we're with our clan.
Oh my goodness. Yes, yes, yes. And how does perfectionism fit with that? That's another question to ask yourself. And if you that's so interesting, right? Because everything boils down to that human need to belong. And things that stress you, if somebody's mad at you or not liking what you do or who you are, you're not belonging. So that's a cause of stress.
Absolutely. So yes, I think, in our wisdom, I'm laughing because I know I have no wisdom, but anyway, I'm going to use the word anyway. It feels
Yes, you
like a
do.
nice word.
You do.
If we can kind of support people, give people permission that it doesn't need to be perfect, and say, actually, what emotion is the holiday giving you? Is it giving you that happiness and that contentedness and that feeling of belonging? Or is the getting stressed about the tiny details getting in the way of that? And is there something that we can try to do to overcome that? Is it a question of, speaking to a therapist? Is it a question of journaling? Is it a question of breathing? Is it, what is it that will help us to get back to the basic thing of actually relating to the people around us, being part of that little clan and belonging, rather than striving for some impossible achievement?
Yes. Yeah. Everybody needs to get off Pinterest, right?
Come on, Pinterest is the best place in the world. I have so many Pinterest boards, not for like anything perfectionist, just like for dog leads and for tattoos I might get.
I love Pinterest too. But when, maybe taking stock of the pressure, is it external pressure from, and it may be other people, your mother-in-law may expect that you have this, this, and this on Christmas Day, and it's at 4 o'clock and whatever. There's the external pressure, but then assess the internal pressure. And if there's a lot of internal pressure, maybe besides boundaries on the mother-in-law, we actually need to look at boundaries on ourselves. I had to look at that last year. That is one of the reasons why I was not very active in the Perimenopause Hub. I had to put some boundaries on myself for my mental health. And people might not like you for that. People might push back because people are used to getting what they want, right? And we have to this is the time, in your 40s and your 50s, to start to let that crap go, because the road ahead is hopefully long, but we want to make it our own and start enjoying holidays for ourselves and doing things for ourselves, not in a selfish way. But when you feed and nourish yourself as a whole human, you are going to be more of a light at the Christmas dinner table.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I don't know how we sum up what we've just said there, but basically it's have permission for it not to be perfect. Think about why these things are stressing you.
Yes.
And try to get back to the real crux of it, of what really matters.
Yes. And even, what you said is think about like that whole reflection. It's valuable for almost anything in our lives. So to reflect on what's stressing you and then even separate it, what's outside, what's inside. But you can even go further. What can you control? You can't control your mother-in-law's mood. It's not your problem. Her mood is about herself, not you. What can you control? And when you start to think about the things that you can control, which is your thoughts, your feelings, and emotions, then the things that you can't control can take on a different meaning to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think for anybody in a situation where they're feeling really, really just like it's all too much, doing a list, physically writing out a list of things I can control, things I can't control, and then going, okay, I'm gonna have to just let go the ones I can't control. And I know that's really easily said and very hard to do. I'm very aware of that. I'm not being glib about it at all. But actually, once you see it written down and you really acknowledge that those are things that you can't control, you can't control what the weather's going to do. You can't control what our government's going to do about COVID. We can't control any of those things. So much as they are adding stress to things, we can't, in an ideal world, we want to just sort of take a step back and go, right, okay, that just is what it is. I will control what's happening in my little bubble.
Yes. And you know, that word control, it gives us a sense of security, doesn't it? When we feel like we can control things, we feel like our world is safe.
Hmm.
So being out of control with emotions, whatever, it may be bringing up feelings of you not being safe, but you're not aware of that. So maybe with this list of what I can't control and what I can, you could also make an alternative list, another list, I should say, that would help you. You know, what calms me? What feeds me? It is a bath. It's a book. It's a walk with my dog. It's a pizza and a beer on a Friday night and I'm not cooking. What
Yeah.
gives you, and do it. Like,
Yeah.
make sure that you have something blocked off where you give to yourself. And that's a very hard thing for a lot of women to do because they feel selfish.
And yet, without doing that, it's actually almost more selfish not to do it, because you ultimately aren't giving the best of you to those people you're trying to give everything to. You do end up then having the silly, snippy arguments because there's nothing left to give. Whereas actually, if you had built in this time, and it might only be 2 minutes, it doesn't need to be like spa days and a holiday on your own or whatever. I mean, much as that's lovely, don't get me wrong, um but it might be just having 2 minutes to listen to a headspace meditation, or it might
Yeah.
be whatever, so that actually that then it's nourishing you, and then you're able to nourish the people around you.
Absolutely. And I love how you said that because I think sometimes we think that giving ourselves space and time has to be a big deal. But I mean, one of my rituals is a tea. I have an herbal tea for the nervous system today. Um, and I make that. And sometimes I do shut the door to my office and say, I'm working and I'm in here and I'm maybe just thinking or writing in my journal and nobody knows. I don't tell them the truth. I should, maybe I should, and I do sometimes, but you know, nobody has to know what you're doing 24/7. Heck, I used to hide in the bathroom when my kids were younger.
And I don't think you're alone in that.
No.
And if that's where you can find some space to just be, and that's winning. And we all have to look at what our life, our individual set of circumstances looks like, to see how we build that in. Is it going for a walk with the dog and going, no, I'm walking the dog on my own today? Is it going and doing some gardening? Is it,
Yeah.
sorting through the sort of the junk pile because you'll feel better for having done it? Not because you think you should for anybody else, but because you know that having cleared that clutter will make you feel better. It doesn't matter what it is, but it's doing something that will nourish you, rather than just giving to everybody else.
Absolutely. And once you look at the emotional portions of your stress, you can also move on to the physical because we started this whole talking about seasonal affective disorder and mood and sunlight and stress can lead to depression and anxiety. So one of the things you can give yourself, even if it's cloudy outside, is natural light as soon as you get up to start the balance of some hormones that will help you with rest later on in the day. And there is a lot of science around that connection to nature for calming the nervous system. There's so many things and so many resources in the hub too when it comes to calming the nervous system. But you do have to think about the gut too. There's that bi-directional relationship. And in fact, if anybody ever wants to, I do brain picking sessions. They're a nominal charge if anybody wants to reach out and do a brain picking session with me.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you very much, Tanya. I think we could go on for hours, but I'm gonna keep this nice and short and sweet.
Okay, see you again. Thank you.
Thank you.